You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I'm not going to get into the election. This isn't the right forum for it. All I'm going to say is the pollsters got it incredibly wrong again. There needs to be a serious overhaul of that profession. I'm also not going to talk a lot about Joe Douglas's press conference. There's really not a lot there to talk about. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, we stink. Adam Gase is going to go at the end of this year. Sam Darnold's going to go. We're going to draft Trevor Lawrence, and we're going to go after Eric Bieniemy. He's not going to say that. He toed the company line, which is to be expected. There's really not a lot there. The one thing I'll say is, and while I still don't like Joe Douglas, I have no faith in his plan, I have no faith in his ability to put a playoff team together for the Jets. I liked that he went out there and owned it. He said that he made mistakes. He said that he made a mistake with Robbie Anderson. He said that he deserves some of the blame for this season. At least he went out and owned it. Adam Gase has not done that. I give Douglas credit. Now, granted, Gase and Douglas are built differently. Gase is very sensitive to criticism. He doesn't like contrarians to his view, which makes you wonder why anyone thought he'd be a good fit in New York. I mean, yeah, I got that wrong. I thought he'd be able to learn from what happened in Miami, but no, he hasn't. Sam Darnold has been better at taking blame than Adam Gase has. Gase is pinning it all on the players. Darnold is taking his share of the blame, and Douglas is taking his share of the blame, but Gase isn't looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, you know what? I've got to do a better job here. So, from a wordsmith's point of view, Gase is the big bad wolf here. Now, having said that, actions speak louder than words. And I'll repeat something that I've said a million times. I don't think Gase is the seminal reason for this. I do think it's Douglas. I do think it's Darnold. Remember that three-pronged blame game that I played? How much of the percentage of blame do you attribute to Douglas, Gase, and Darnold? I don't remember exactly what I said before, but as of right now, it's 65% Joe Douglas, 20% Sam Darnold, and 15% Adam Gase. Douglas can come out and say, yeah, you know what? I messed up. I've got to do a better job. But what solace does that give me as a Jets fan? That really means nothing to me. You want to tell me that Joe Douglas should get another year? Give him a chance to learn from his mistakes? Absolutely not. When you put together a roster that's most likely going to go 0-16, especially after seeing the same team go 7-9 the year prior, you don't get a second chance. I like that Douglas took ownership of his failures. Good for him. It's the least he could do. I wasn't expecting anything more than that. It was the standard boilerplate stuff. He toed the company line. He did what he was supposed to do. I can't begrudge him for saying what he said. And I can't say, you know what? This guy gets it. This guy's owning his failures. And he's going to learn for next year. And he's going to put together a great roster. I still want this whole thing blown up. If Donald Trump ends up losing, Woody Johnson's coming back. That makes it exponentially more likely that Douglas, Gase, and Darnold are going to go. It's kind of funny, I said I wasn't going to get too into the Jets. There's really not a lot to talk about today. Yesterday was dominated by the election, obviously. And of course, Major League Baseball picked yesterday to announce their Gold Glove winners, because that makes sense. Idiots. I mean, congrats to the winners, but give them their time of day. Why couldn't you announce it today rather than yesterday? That makes no sense. Once again, Rob Manfred proving that he's inept. So not a whole hell of a lot happened in the sports world yesterday, so I can get into this. I was talking to my buddy Nick on Sunday, and you know he's a big Kansas City Chiefs fan. I told him that I wanted to burn this whole thing down when it comes to the Jets. Bring in Eric Bieniemy, bring in John Dorsey. Kansas City Chiefs 2.0. Nick said no, you don't want John Dorsey. Bieniemy's the right call, but Jacob, you don't want John Dorsey. I brought up Louis Riddick also, but I didn't talk about him with Nick. I was focusing on Chiefs guys. Nick told me that the guy I should target from the Chiefs is Mike Borgonzi. Now, this was a name that I was not familiar with at all. I'll be the first person to tell you, I wouldn't know Mike Borgonzi if he came to my house and delivered me a pizza. But if someone as smart as Nick, who follows the Chiefs as closely as he does, says, this is the guy you want, that means a lot to me. So I looked into it. Borgonzi is the Chiefs' Director of Football Operations. He's been with the Chiefs for over 10 years. We all know that the Chiefs are excellent at developing these guys into superstars, whether it's players, coaches, or executives. People forget, Chris Ballard was originally in the Kansas City Chiefs front office. He went to the Colts. That team is now tied for the lead in the AFC South. And what could also be appealing is Borgonzi can say, I'm going to bring Bieniemy with me. This is a package deal. The Jets have their organization set up in a messed up way. Joe Douglas does not have the authority to fire Adam Gase. Mike McCagnon did not have the authority to fire Todd Bowles. Both of them report to the owner. The owner's the only one who can make those calls. I hate that setup. I think it's ridiculous. But what that means is the Jets will be more amenable to a package deal than other teams. The Giants should move on from Dave Gettleman. Would they be amenable to a package deal? Or would they want the new GM to conduct a wide-ranging search? I still think Dorsey is the right fit. There's no one better at bringing in talent than John Dorsey. And Louis Riddick is an incredibly smart guy. We've seen these broadcasters make the jump to the front office before, and they do really well. John Lynch with the 49ers, John Gruden and Mike Mayock to the Raiders. Riddick has front office experience. I think it would work, but Borgonzi would work too. The one thing I don't want is another Mike McCagnon. A guy who not a lot of people knew about. He worked closely with Charlie Casserly, and Casserly was leading the Jets search. Casserly and McCagnon worked together when they were with the Texans. But other than Casserly, no one knew about this guy. Everyone knows about Dorsey. Everyone knows about Riddick. Borgonzi isn't as well known as those guys, but he's certainly not exotic. If the Jets go with any of those three guys, maybe some others. I mean, before they hired Douglas, they interviewed Champ Kelly, Lance Newmark, Daniel Jeremiah. I guess they'd be okay. But I'll tell you, I'm not as high on them as I am Dorsey, Riddick, and Borgonzi. The one big piece of sports news that broke was that the Islanders finally made another move. I'm not begrudging Lou Lamoriello for not doing anything. He didn't have the cap space for it. It's just kind of frustrating that Matthew Barzal is still a restricted free agent. He hasn't been locked up. But Ryan Pulock has been locked up. Pulock signed a 2-year deal worth $10 million. Before this past season, you probably weren't that familiar with Pulock unless you were an Islanders fan. But if you were watching this team in the playoffs, against the Panthers, against the Capitals, against the Flyers, and against the Lightning, you saw how important Pulock is. He's the best defenseman on the Islanders. Really, really good two-way player. Should be more effective on the power play, but Jim Hiller doesn't know his ass from his elbow, so there's only so much you can do if you're Pulock. The Islanders had to bring him back. Out of their 3 big RFAs, Barzal, Pulock, and Taves, the 2 that absolutely weren't expendable were Barzal and Pulock. Taves, you can live with. I like Taves, but if the Islanders had to lose anyone, and they did because they're not in a great position with the cap, let it be Taves. They got 2 seconds for him. That's a very fair return. $5 million a year may be a tad steep, but not too much. I like this deal. I like Pulock a lot. Like I said, the Islanders had to bring him back. But what does this mean for Matthew Barzal? According to CapFriendly.com, the Islanders only have a little over $5 million in cap space. That's not enough to bring Matthew Barzal back. Even if you want to sign him for $5 million, you still need to keep some cap room open to make mid-season moves. Whether it's calling guys up, making some moves at the deadline. Cap Friendly gives projected cap space also, which accounts for all of those variables. They have the Islanders at just under $4 million, not counting Barzal. Matt Barzal easily deserves $8 million a year. And even then, that's the bare minimum that you can expect him to get. If he got 8.5, 9 mil, even more than that, he's earned it. As infuriating as Barzal can be, and believe me, he can be. He doesn't have the greatest hockey IQ in the world. Tries to do everything himself sometimes. He's so gifted offensively that you put up with it. So where are the Islanders gonna find that extra money? Some people have brought up the idea of long-term injured reserve. If the Islanders can do it, that makes sense. Buying out a guy like Ladd or Hickey or Komarov doesn't save the Islanders a ton of money. What they may have to do is pull off an NBA-style trade. Give up a high pick and or a highly touted prospect and say to the other team, we'll give you this, but you have to take on Andrew Ladd's contract. You have to take on Thomas Hickey's contract. I mean, I'm looking at the teams with a ton of cap space right now. The Devils would probably be open to that. Even though they're looking to make a little bit of a push, they have $17 million in projected cap space. As of this moment, they have a little over 22 mil. They can take on Ladd and Hickey, and it won't hamstring them too much. Same thing with a team like the Kings. 13.5 mil in projected cap space, 18 mil in current cap space. The Kings don't have a great defense outside of Drew Doughty and Oli Mata. Sean Walker, too, is pretty good. Maybe they'd be amenable to bringing Hickey back. Hickey was drafted by the Kings. They never gave him a shot. The Islanders need to think outside of the box here. They need to bring Barzal back, and they need to lock him up long term. You don't want another John Tavares situation where this elite franchise superstar leaves. Even this Pulock deal, it's only for 2 years. Pulock is going to be a free agent, unrestricted, when he's 28 years old. He'll be in the prime of his career. I'm not begrudging Lamoriello for only signing Pulock for 2 years. You didn't have much flexibility in the matter, but still, it's a little disconcerting. I'm still not over Tavares leaving. I mean, I am in a hockey sense, but in an emotional sense, I still remember how upsetting that was to me. I've told this story before. I was sitting at a gate in McCarran Airport in Las Vegas, waiting to fly home to New York. I see on my handy-dandy Trade Rumors app, best app there is, that John Tavares signed with the Leafs. Immediately, I scream out loud, no, my dad is walking back from, I think, Hudson News. And I scream to him, Dad, Tavares to the Leafs. We were both upset. You can't tell me that can't happen again with Barzell. You can't tell me that can't happen again with Pulak. Pulak is nowhere near Tavares and Barzell in terms of skill. But Barzell isn't that far away from Tavares. I'm not saying Barzell is going to leave, but it's a little disconcerting that he hasn't been locked up yet. I understand that they don't have the cap space to do it. That's what I keep telling myself. That's what I keep telling my friends. Don't worry about it. It's going to happen. But it is a little disconcerting. Of course it is. Alright, now it's time for me to do something I haven't done in a while. I'm going to start the trifecta off by going Baseball Hall of Faming. The guy who I want to tell you about is Ed Roush. Now, this just points to a different evaluation criteria. I don't look at batting average for Hall of Fame. I don't think it works. I like hits. I like raw totals. Roush's career batting average is .323. That's really good. I like that a lot. His hits is 2,376. He never had more than 200 hits in a season. To me, that's not Hall of Fame. He won 2 batting titles. Good for him. DJ LeMahieu has 2 batting titles. Is he a Hall of Famer? Roush won 1 World Series in 1919 when the Reds beat the Black Sox. Huge asterisk. And even then, in that playoff series, Roush only hit .214. He had 7 RBIs. I like that. But only hitting .214 in a World Series? Come on, that doesn't work for me. In addition to all that, Roush was one of the first players to adopt a mercenary mindset. This guy haggled for every last dollar he could. He was one of the first players to be really money hungry. He'd miss spring training games because of salary disputes. He'd miss some regular season games because of salary disputes. I'm not begrudging him for wanting the money that he was worth. And I understand that we have non-Boy Scouts in the Hall of Fame. If Roush was around today, a lot of people would say, shut up and play. But I do feel that does get factored into the equation somewhat. If Roush played every game he could, didn't miss games because of salary disputes, maybe he would have gotten into that Hall of Fame threshold. I'm not saying you need to have 3,000 hits to be a Hall of Famer, but you've got to have more than 2,376. Also, Roush played a couple years in the upstart Federal League. That's counted in his total of 2,376. Some people will say that you should take those away. That's a big ball of wax, and I don't want to get into that here, but if we were to take all those hits away, he'd only have 2,158 career hits. That's definitely not a Hall of Famer. Was Roush a really good player? Yes. but I think there's enough there to say that he belongs in the Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame. Let's take a metaphorical crowbar to his plaque. Alright, it's time for this day in sports history. On this day in 2009, I had the greatest day of my life. The New York Yankees won Game 6 of the 2009 World Series by a score of 7-3 with a 12-year-old Jacob in attendance. To this day, that is my favorite team ever. What's the saying? Everyone remembers their first? Well, that was the first championship that one of my teams had that I remember. I don't remember 98. I don't remember 99. I don't remember 2000. I was born in 97. But that 09 team, I remember vividly. To this day, I have not forgiven my father for not taking me to Game 6 of the ALCS when the Yankees won the pennant. I am still incredibly upset about that. Now, I can go on and on about how great the 09 team was. And my God, were they a great team. They opened up the new stadium with a bang. They signed CC Sabathia, AJ Burnett, and Mark Teixeira in the offseason. The Yankees had 7 guys hit at least 20 home runs that year. They were at the top or near the top of every major offensive category when you look at just American League teams. They made some key midseason trades to bolster their bench. Ramiro Pena did a really good job as the Yankees' utility infielder that year. Cashman wanted a veteran, so he went after Jerry Hairston Jr. The Yankees wanted another backup outfielder. They traded for Eric Hinsky. Both of those guys played valuable depth roles for the team down the stretch. In fact, Hairston had a big moment in the 09 playoffs. In Game 2 of the ALCS, I was there for this. Hairston pinch hit for Freddie Guzman, who came on earlier for pinch running purposes. Got a single. Gardner got a sac bunt that moved Hairston over to second. Cano was intentionally walked. And Melky Cabrera drove him in on a crazy error by the Angels' second baseman, Mysaris Torres. That team was a team of destiny. They close out the old stadium by missing the playoffs. The first time since 94, or 93 if you want to get technical. Because 94 they were in first place at the time of the strike, that they missed the playoffs. So in 09, they go all in, ushering in a new stadium, signing 3 huge free agents, making some key trades, keeping the core 4 together. They were by far and away the best team in baseball that year. They met the Phillies in the World Series. Jimmy Rollins ticked off a lot of Yankees fans by saying the Phillies would repeat as World Series champs. They'd win in 6 games. It didn't upset me that Rollins said that. I mean, what do you want him to say? But it did give the Yankees bulletin board material. I could go heavily into the '09 World Series, but I'm not going to. All you need to know is the Yankees rode CC Sabathia, AJ Burnett, and Andy Pettitte all throughout the playoffs. They only had 3 starters. The best moment of that World Series happened in the 9th inning of Game 4. The Yankees are up 2-1 in the series. The game is tied at 4. Watching this game with my dad, we're on the edge of our seats. Johnny Damon hits a 2-out single off Brad Lidge. On the next pitch to Mark Teixeira, Damon stole second. Then, Damon starts running for third. My dad and I are screaming at this point, "What are you doing, you stupid idiot?" Then the camera cuts over, and no one's at third. Everyone was shifted to the right for Teixeira, so no one was there to cover third. Damon saw it and just started running. It's one of the most heads-up plays in baseball history. Teixeira gets hit by a pitch. Alex Rodriguez hits an RBI double. Jorge Posada hits an RBI single. It's 7-4. The Yankees have a 3-1 lead. AJ Burnett lays an egg in Game 5. Okay, the Yankees get to win in front of their home crowd. The hero of that game was Hideki Matsui. Solely because of that game, he won World Series MVP. As God is my witness, I am convinced of that. He went 3 for 4 with 6 RBIs. In just one game, he had 6 RBIs. He killed Pedro Martinez. He killed Chad Durbin. Andy Pettitte was solid, not great, not terrible. The Yankees win 7-3. I'm hugging everyone in sight. The Yankees celebrate on the field. "We are the champions" is playing. Someone actually ran onto the field and was tackled by like 10 cops. And everyone around me was saying, they needed 10 cops to bring that guy down? I mean, come on. It was a little overkill. I'm not saying don't arrest him, but 10 cops seems a bit excessive. The Yankees were selling custom bats, and they made a big deal about that. I wanted a bat. It's really late at this point. It's like 11:30, midnight-ish. My dad and I had waited for about 15 minutes, then the person behind the counter said, "It's going to be another hour before we get to you." So, we leave. As we're leaving the stadium, some guy bumps into me. I'm 12 years old at this point, remember. I turned around and I was prepared to say something to him. Then I saw that he was in nothing but an American flag Speedo. That's a true story. Just kept on walking. As God is my witness, that is a true story. But make no mistake about it. November 4th, 2009 was the greatest day of my life. Alright, it's time for another Mount Rushmore. We're on the Pittsburgh Penguins now. And Penguins fans like to say that there's an Islanders-Penguins rivalry. And I guess there is a little bit, although it's not as big a rivalry as Islanders-Rangers or Islanders-Flyers or Penguins-Capitals. It's a rivalry, but it's not a huge one. But this Mount Rushmore was really easy to do. The correct Mount Rushmore is Mario Lemieux, Sidney Crosby, Marc-Andre Fleury, and Evgeny Malkin. For whatever it's worth, 5 would be Jaromir Jagr, and 6 would be Tom Barrasso. But obviously, Mount Rushmore only has 4. What can you say about Lemieux that hasn't already been said? One of the best players in NHL history. I have a list of my top 100 NHL players. For a while, I had Lemieux kind of low on that list. And then I really thought about it, and it's like, Jacob, who are you trying to play? I don't care that the guy only has 2 Stanley Cups. He's one of the most dominant players in NHL history. He saved that franchise from bankruptcy. He came back from getting lymphoma to put together 3 point-a-game seasons. For my money, he's the 4th best skater in NHL history. I have him behind Gretzky, Howe, and Bobby Orr. If I had to combine goalies, Brodeur and Waugh, it's tough. He's ahead of Jacques Plante. He's ahead of Terry Sawchuk. He's ahead of those guys, but if I were to rank Brodeur and Waugh with the skaters, I don't know if I could. Sidney Crosby, for the longest time, was the best player in the NHL. Another guy who saved the Penguins. The Penguins really transitioned, I don't want to say seamlessly, but really, really well from the Lemieux era to the Crosby era. That's very rare. That you can transition from the era of one superstar to the era of another superstar so seamlessly. It's like the Yankees with DiMaggio and Mantle. A lot of people don't like Crosby. They think he's a crybaby. He complains to the refs a lot. And he does have a tendency to get hurt a lot. But that doesn't take away from his dominance. If not for Lemieux, Crosby would hold every major Penguins scoring record. He's the easy second choice. He's a future Hall of Famer. There's no question about it. Marc-Andre Fleury won 3 Stanley Cups with the Penguins. I will say this. Fleury doesn't get credit for all 3. He gets credit for 09. He doesn't get credit for 16. That's Matt Murray. And 17 was both of them. So, if you really boil it down to the ground, he's responsible for 1.5. But still, he's on the Stanley Cup 3 times with the Penguins. That does mean something. In addition to that, Fleury broke all of Tom Barrasso's records. 375 wins as a Penguin. 4-time All-Star. Future Hall of Famer. He has to be on this Mount Rushmore. And Evgeny Malkin is the perfect Robin to Crosby's Batman. Doesn't command the spotlight, doesn't get upset that he's not regarded as one of the 5 best players in the NHL, just goes out there and does his job. Career point-a-game player, future Hall of Famer, 3-time Stanley Cup winner. People forget this. In the 11-12 season, he won the Hart Trophy. He has a 50-goal season to his name. He's a 4-time All-Star. It's tough for me to leave Jágr out. But at the end of the day, Malkin is going to eclipse Jágr in points. He's only 3 points behind Jágr in terms of points with the Penguins. And in terms of goals with the Penguins, Malkin is only 23 goals behind Jágr. He can break both of those this coming year. Tomorrow, you're going to get the interview that I'm going to do with David Ostrowski, the author of the book about pro sports in 1993. Also, I can confirm this. A week from today, you're going to get my 2020 NBA mock draft. That's going to come a week before the NBA draft. The draft is scheduled for November 18th, so I'm going to do my mock draft on November 11th. You may think to yourself, why did I need to confirm that? Well, I'm going to have a little help. You know him. You love him. I mentioned him today. Nick Ornberger will be joining me on Zoom to help me out with a 2-round NBA mock draft. Haven't talked a lot about the NBA draft, so that's going to be the whole show that day. The full 2020 NBA mock draft. It's going to be done via Zoom. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that Rookie Wilson was a candidate for Mookie of the Year.